I have.
Okay.
There we are. We are now progressing, recording, and I will go back to the Book Band Busters. Because this is a group of more than 350,000 at this point, suburban moms who have said, we are tired of people saying that we want to in some way control what our kids read. We want them to be able to learn and read, and whether it's Tennessee or California or anywhere that these folks are, they have gotten quite organized, and not a minute, in my view, too soon. And so I had sent over, Julie, to you some things about their organization. And if you wanted to just pop that into the chat, that would be terrific for anyone who wanted to pursue it further. But they call what they do red, wine, and blue. And
Red wine and what?
Blue, rather than red, white, and blue.
No.
I believe. And so that they are bringing women together, much as the Canadians had brought together at this point hundreds of thousands of people to in some way stop the anti-vax truckers. And so that I guess I wanted to just share with you all some bit of light in the universe that is telling us it's time for us to get our actions together as well. So I had initially thought that Judy Appel, another member of our steering committee, might be here to talk about the police reform panel, but I don't see her with us as yet. So I want to move on to other agenda items, and should she arrive late, I'll make sure that she has her chance to describe how things went. But the panel, for those of us who weren't able to attend, was quite impressive. There were 6 remarkable people who had lots to say individually and among us and to our questions. So I guess, Judith, it is now your chance to talk about the gun violence update that you have for us.
Well, rather than talk about gun violence, I'm going to just mention something about an organization called Youth Alive, which has been around in Oakland for 30 years, and they respond directly to incidents of gun violence. They support victims. They attempt to interrupt the cycle of violence. They will go directly to hospitals to talk to those who've been injured. They will help people move out of their neighborhood if they need to in order to be safe. And I just wanted, coming up, I got a report of their 2021 actions and how statistics on how many people they've helped. And it's so kind of overwhelming. I mean, if anybody who reads the newspaper every single day, and I'm just so impressed that the person who wrote to me, Lauren Greenberg, she's their development director, said, I can't help but feel hopeful in 2022 and invigorated by the potential of a new year. For me, the bold courage, creativity, and compassion of my colleagues who continue to show up as beacons of peace and healing in the community define 2021 as well as anything else. And I mean, I'm just kind of stunned at the ability of people to hang in there and keep responding, and talk about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. One of the statistics that really struck me is they have a program called Caught in the Crossfire, where they're, as I say, respond directly to victims of violence. In 2021, Caught in the Crossfire worked with 254 violently injured clients, including 55 for short-term crisis intervention. And they train teens in high schools to conduct workshops and to be peer counselors. Their website has a lot of information. It's youthalive.org. And in particular, I want to mention that they, like all small nonprofits, need funding in order to hire people to be mentors, in order to provide the services. And in May, they're going to have a fundraising breakfast, and I'm hosting a table, and I hope to be able to provide 10 of us to be there. They don't require a minimum donation to be part of the table, but the breakfast is May 10th which is a big day apparently in the East Bay, which I didn't realize. It's called 5-10 Day, which is of course our area code. And it's going to be at the Sequoia Country Club from 9 to 10. So it's going to be a quick get in and get out kind of program. And so far I have 6 people who have committed to be part of that. And I would love to have a table of 10. So I'm hoping that we can get 4 more people to commit to be at the breakfast. And hopefully it'll be in person, not a virtual experience. So that's my main thing. I just love this organization and think that, you know, it's an opportunity for us to reach out across communities and across age groups. So if anybody is interested in being part of it, I would love to hear from you and sign you up for the table. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. If you would also kind of keep on top of whether they're going to be wanting to do another tour of the sort that they have and let us all know that, because those of us on Elder Action that were part of that tour were quite impressed, I think, with the organization.
Right. And that's another one. Another thing that can be done in support of them is if you're part of another organization or a church group or any you know, civic minded group or even a neighborhood group and would like to know more about their work, they would love to do what they call a tour, which is basically an informational Zoom session. Mm-hmm. And again, I'd love to connect you with them to help set that up.
Judy, would you please put the information about the breakfast in the chat room?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Joan, for asking.
And it will be in the minutes too.
Mm-hmm. And probably even Judith Coates will be able to reach out to you should you want to individually contact her if all else fails. High tech, low tech, we'll get it done.
Yeah. We'll get you.
We will indeed. There is much to report from the Climate Change Task Force. And I wanted to be sure that you got into understanding of all of the sorts of things we're doing. We have now assembled a group of about 12 people of the 100 and some that are part of Elder Action altogether. So we're quite pleased. It's a group of get things done and do them. And so I wanted to quickly mention there's a proposal from PG&E about rooftop solar. And I know, Julie, you had found evidence that we have a victory to celebrate in that department. Would you want to fill us in very briefly about that?
Yes, well, I'm going to make this very brief, but Bill McKibben was asked at his presentation what people should do to fight back, because PG&E had asked for a very large amount of money to be paid by residential rooftop solar owners to supposedly, they were phrasing this as a racial justice issue, to offset the cost and make sure that the solar people didn't get away with not having to pay for the infrastructure. So it went to the PUC, and that they were the Public Utility Commission, and they had to approve it. Well, McKibben said, write to the governor. And apparently enough people wrote to the governor that, and maybe to the PUC, but they have put this off indefinitely. So it's not happening. PG&E is not getting their outrageous amount of money. And one of the points here is that if this had gone into effect, it would have destroyed the rooftop solar industry, but also completely discouraged anybody from putting in rooftop solar. So I'm sure they'll go back to the drawing board and figure it out. I sent a letter to the governor and I said, you know, with the giant surplus that you keep talking about, why don't you give PG&E, if they truly do need this subsidy, give them the money from the surplus and don't take it out of our money. So I never got an answer, by the way, from him or Buffy Hicks or Nancy Skinner, but somebody listened because it's gone. So victory.
Yes.
Always worth celebrating. Thank you. Thank you. We also have an update on one of the pieces of work we've been doing as a task force is to take a look at the alma maters of all of us, the colleges and universities, and the work that's being done on campus currently, but also some of the colleges who have stepped forward and said, well, we want to divest of our endowments of all fossil fuel related stocks. We spoke last time how some of them actually wanted the wonderful headline of our college divested, and underneath that didn't mention as of 2075, which is not even close to what's needed. So that we're going to be doing thank yous to our colleges and universities. We're going to be doing, but let's hustle a little bit more to those that are trying to get the credit without doing the work. And we want to also be sure that you all understand a little something that I, again, came across this week from an article in The Economist, that The Economist, which is not often a friend of many of the things that we hold dear here in this organization, did say that it was kind of appalled at seeing how private investors were dumping fossil fuel stocks like very rapidly at this point. However, what those who are advising are trying to do with that, those who are within the industry, they're trying to dump those stocks on our pension funds, our money, on our universities and colleges that we went to, and assume that everybody's a lot more naive and less sophisticated and will be finding it just so wonderful they can afford to invest in that now that the prices are a little lower. So we're going to be talking a lot at the Climate Action Task Force about what could be done to alert lots of the colleges and universities that, as I understand from Jan Carraza, who is the head of our Ashby Village development team and has worked for decades with colleges and universities and the investments that they make, we're going to be trying to alert reporters at some of the different news organizations to perhaps go and talk to some of the colleges and universities and say, well, how do you feel about this, that you're being kind of really considered a little stupid and being able to actually devalue your investments rather than to be fiduciarily responsible, which is most institutions' reaction when they're asked to divest. You must be responsible fiduciaries. And it is certainly with lots of evidence that it's irresponsible to be investing now in fossil fuels. So I wanted to share that. And then I know Robin Finnegan wants to talk some about an event that relates to another piece of work we're doing on the Climate Action Task Force around the large pension funds in California, CalSTRS, the Teachers Pension Fund, and CalPERS, the Public Employee Pension Fund, because there was, for the first time this past week, on February the 9th, a public symposium with people arguing both sides of the question. And those people included the board chair of CalSTRS and others, as well as activists and people who have been pushing for a long time for CalSTRS, the Teachers Union's pension fund, with our money. Our retired teachers sitting here, I'm sure, exist as well, just even today. And Robin, can you proceed and fill us all in on what happened and what is to come? I am wondering if Robin's still here.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Hey,
Okay. I did sit in on it, as did Rochelle. There may have been others there from this group. There were no numbers. We didn't, it was a webinar and we couldn't see anybody, so we have no idea.
well, I
So
think that MA actually, did you attend that as well? Yes, you did.
who did?
MA.
Okay, good. Okay. Then if you have anything to add, I'm going to talk briefly, but add anything you'd like to. There were, Rochelle mentioned, there were the 4 speakers for pro divestment from fossil fuels. and 4 who were not so much for it. And they generally argued on their argument was generally on the complexity of the issue, which is sort of a dodge, but it is a complex issue. There were 2 young women who, oh, and I should say that there was the California Teachers Association, Divest, had been in contact with us and, wanted us to help them with recruiting and attending, etc. There were 2 young women who argued for divestment, who were, I thought, particularly effective. One of them had suffered serious health issues related to exposure to fossil fuels. And Jane Bosberg, who is part of the CTA Divest, gave a very stark picture of the cost of not divesting from fossil fuels. One of the things that was frustrating is we were asked to submit questions, but there was a facilitator who selected questions from apparently a huge number that were submitted. We don't know the audience size.
I
So
think there were about 300 attendees that I found out about.
okay,
Yes.
I'm glad you heard a figure.
Yeah.
But
After the fact, yeah.
But they did not get to many of the questions. And so, I think basically that's the gist of it. It was a useful, but somewhat, I thought, a somewhat frustrating event at the same time.
I'd like to add a couple of things
Good.
that were actually, I didn't think were useful. So I think that the positions that were presented were the kind of anti-divestment, which was the STIR's leadership, unfortunately, really presented 2 arguments: that they felt that divesting from fossil fuels would be a financial disaster for members. I can't help but add that he referenced the fact that part of the challenges of the pension is so many old women who are teachers who keep on living. It's not quite what he said, but it's and I was a bit irritated by that comment. But anyway, so financially, and then the second was that they felt like they had not heard from members what members' opinions were, which I think is an important point for us to remember. And then the counter arguments, which were, there were a couple of really good speakers. There were several articles referenced where well-respected economic analysis corporations, consultants had looked at that question of fossil fuel divestment and had in fact found that fossil fuels been losing money for 10 years.
Yeah, right. Yes.
So there was a really good article that somebody mentioned. I looked it up and I read it and I thought, okay. And then one of the other speakers was a consulting firm back in New York State that did an analysis for some of the New York schools on the question of divestment and found that fossil fuel industry has been losing money for 10 years. And they said they were very willing to come out and work with California schools and the unions if they wanted to do an analysis. So for me, what was useful, and then it was pointed out that all of the teachers' unions virtually have actually polled their members. And as a result of people's strong feeling about divesting, the different teachers' unions have all, they're pushing for divestment. So the two issues of financially it's not feasible or responsible, I think was pretty well disproved. And the idea that members haven't weighed in also was. So for me, those were really important points in our fuel for us as we think about any action. If they need to hear from teachers, retired teachers could certainly go to the CEO of STIRS and let him know their opinions. And just to inform ourselves about this whole issue of fossil fuel and whether it is in fact impossible to divest from it without everybody losing their pensions. So I found that disturbing, frustrating, and a little bit fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I wanted to also add that what would be really helpful to the Climate Action Task Force for all of you to share with us who you know within Ashby Village's community who are retired teachers, because it's going to be real important not to have one of us at a time reaching out, but to really assemble a group of several hundred, and I believe there might be as many as that if we each just even think about our friends or family members or somebody who lives in your neighborhood who's a retired teacher, and be able to begin to educate others as part of the action Elder Action does, and to really reach out to folks and say, would you be comfortable with us including you on receiving information about the process that's underway to really move something as large as CalSTRS, because that's more than 250 billion with a B dollars being managed. And I find it's really important to remember it's our money. It is not CalSTRS money that they're managing. It is our money, our pension funds. And to really make that shift is important. So if also as part of your introduction next session, or even in between now and then, if you'd let me know in particular whether you have friends, family members, others that are retired teachers. We are going to take a look at CalPERS as well, which is the public employee union pensions, not union, the public employee systems pensions for California retired public employees. But we're going to start with CalSTRS because that seems to be in motion the most at the moment. Did anybody have any other questions about either the pension funds or about divestment as it applies to some of the colleges and universities?
I do, Rochelle. I'm just wondering, would it be of any use to also include current teachers who will eventually be collecting a retirement?
It would very much actually be of use as well, in part even for the education of those retiring teachers, because it's really important that the voices of already retired, but also of on the verge of retiring are also included, and students. Students at some of the schools within the state have also come in support of their teachers, because they're people who are very active in climate groups. Mark?
Just on a quick question, is the same effort being directed toward the university system as it is to the statewide educational system? And the second question is there a path toward involving private nonprofit colleges and graduate schools who have investment portfolios that can be addressed?
So I'm going to look at your second question first, and actually, Robin, if you wanted to address this also, I know we've been talking about if a university or college is a public institution, they are required to publish the sorts of investments that their endowment is involved in. But if they're a private college, they're not by any law required to share information of that sort.
What about nonprofits?
It's more difficult to get it from them. But we do have a spreadsheet that is still being fine-tuned that we can eventually get out to everyone, that does list enormous numbers of universities, some private, but a lot of them public, that will have relevant information. And that's also when we want to try to get people who can group together, who are alumni or interested in individuals, to contact those institutions.
And also to contact, as part of the contacting the institution, campus groups that are active,
Sure.
of current students who are trying to move this sort of thing along, Mark, as well. And the other thing that was mentioned in this context, not one of the two things you were asking about, but the size of STRS and the size of California PERS pension funds are significant. It's PERS is even, I think, in the 400 400 billions rather, of money within those funds. But TIAA-CREF is even larger still in other parts of the country than California, and in the trillions of dollars of pension funds. So all of those are kind of long shot institutions. But when also Bill McKibben spoke and said it would be good if you did find colleges and universities that were proud of the fact they already divested of fossil fuel stocks, it would be important to try and reach them in some of the third act, the organization that Bill McKibben spoke about when he addressed us back in January. That third act is planning a campaign that would get a lot of individuals, but also small businesses and also nonprofit organizations, Mark, to look at what concern you had raised, to get those institutions and individuals to essentially withdraw funds from especially the 4 largest banks that are involved in funding fossil fuel projects currently. And so it would be important to really take a look at where our credit cards and our individual bank accounts are. But should we find our alma maters already are proud at their positions around divestment, to get them to move their much larger bank accounts from those same banks and to be involved again through Elder Action, through the Elder Action Climate Action Task Force, to really begin to assemble those of us who can take that sort of idea and make sure that it's coordinated in time with the work that's coming through Third Act. So I don't know, Mark, if that quite answered what you were after. Did you want to follow up and explain further if I have missed the point?
No, I think you've got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're most welcome. Dagmar.
In light of that, I think that's really important, and I suspect most of us have credit cards associated with those banks. And in preparation for getting rid of them, I think it would be good if we could make a list of banks or credit unions that we could use instead.
And I think that would be terrific for people who don't know about credit unions. There are several that I would put on such a list that are even very local, that are doing a lot of good investment around affordable housing. Because I think, Dagmar, in the same way as you look at it, it's not just what we do to divest, it's what we do to reinvest. And that it's really, again, a possibility of finding those lists. And as a member of the task force, I'm hoping you'll join us in putting together such a list. I know they are doing that at Third Act as well. And it's part of why they're not saying, oh, cut up your credit card right away, because they're trying to find that out. And I don't know, Julie Freestad, would it be okay for me to mention the age discrimination dimension of that, or have we already covered that at our prior meeting? I think you're still muted.
Okay, I think you should mention it, but I also want to make a point here that I sent out the minutes with both reminders of the meeting so that people could review them, because we were feeling like we didn't want to have people who attend regularly have to hear the same thing over and over again. And at the same time, we didn't want new people not to know what we were talking about. So it's a bit of it's a happy dilemma to have, to keep having new people. And then we did talk about it before, but I think you could quickly just remind people what we're talking about. Rochelle.
Could you say a little more what you feel still needs a reminder?
No, that's it.
There's something about old age and discrimination with it.
Yeah, well, the fact.
Well, all right, the part of it.
Third Act keeps talking about this cut up your credit cards thing that they're going to be doing in an organized way at a certain time in the future. But people got really excited about it. And one person did cut up her credit card and then discovered that she couldn't get another credit card because she was old. I mean, that's pretty much what the bank told her she didn't have any credit. She didn't have a mortgage. She wasn't driving anymore. She didn't have a car loan. And so was a good lesson for third act, to understand that they're working with a group of people who are very active, but also who are faced with challenges. So that was a good thing. And it's also a good thing that they didn't roll out this cut up your card yet. But, and hopefully they'll stop talking about it until they're ready to go. Rochelle keeps reminding them that they're not quite there. Is that what you meant?
Precisely. Thank you. All right. I think we're now at the stage where our agenda item about the Elder Action Survey is ready.
Actually, I think we're at the electrification of school buses.
Okay, let's do that first then.
Come next, and I think I left it off the agenda, so let's do that.
Okay, so let us start then, Toby and Joanne, with you both. Do you want to decide which of you should begin?
I'm Joanne. I don't have too much to say right now because we have learned, for example, that as a result of the funding that the Berkeley school system, if I haven't mentioned this before, has added 8 new electric buses. So I think they're left with 1 or 2 that are the old variety. But what we're now in the midst of, and Toby can kind of go into where we're going in the future, but I'm sort of following up on some of the funding and where it's actually going in terms of the infrastructure. So I'm going to be prepared to report at the next meeting on more details on that.
Terrific, and that'll be our March meeting.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, and at the March meeting, yeah.
Terrific. And I know, Toby, you've been looking not at the state level as much as the national level of all this.
Yes, and I have been involved with all of the groups that are working on electrifying and sending messages, and we will have a new postcard campaign shortly. One of the problems that electrifying seems to be stuck on is that there isn't enough of an electric grid.
Yeah.
It's really a problem because you can't keep saying we're going to electrify everything if there's nowhere to get charged. So one of the states, and to be honest, I don't have that note in front of me. One of the states has figured out that you can electrify the road and you can have something added to your car that would allow you to connect with the road so that as you drive, you will be automatically recharging your car. It's a fantastic idea and would solve many of the problems about the electric grid. So I'm going to keep on top of that one and follow up on it and see if there are any plans in California or any other states to be doing this. And so it's a wide open field because one of the major problems of climate, once you get beyond the fossil fuel aspect of who's funding it, is the fact that there are contracts out as we speak that are for buses and for other vehicles to be bought by various companies, and they're not electric. And really everything new should be electric. So I think that the best that we can do, and we think that is very effective, is get our group to join us as soon as we've got our next campaign to send postcards, because they do seem to be effective according to all the groups that have used them for the elections. And we think we don't have any way to prove it, that we were slightly influential in the major infrastructure. So we'll see what we can do to carry it on. Joanne and I will coordinate and do it. I need all your help to send lots of postcards.
Well, and we showed we could send 500 not long ago, so I bet we could even top that since we have more members now.
Right.
And I think that what we also may want to consider is that the current US Senator from California, Alex Padilla, was one of the co-sponsors. Is that right, Toby, of the legislation?
He's very involved and very pro, and will do what he can, and I think I think what has happened, which is very exciting, is, I mean, if you just think about our group, I think at least half of the people here today mentioned climate. And I think that that's becoming true of the general public, which was not true a few years ago. And I think Bill McKibben and his group, and, you know, he has a great idea that the elders have both the time and the money. And that's why we have to do everything that we can do, because the kids can't really be out there doing it. So I hope you'll all join us. We will need everybody who's got a hand that still writes. I know that's not true for everyone, but most people can. So you'll be hearing from us. I think Joanne and I will try to have something specific ready for March.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you. And you are also, I think, open, UN, Joanne, to others within this larger general meeting who want to join and help out.
Yeah, and they have, some have in the past.
Terrific.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, Julie, I think, are we thinking this is a good time then for the survey?
Okay, so I hope all of you know that we designed a survey to get input from, there are 109 people on the Elder Action mailing list, email list. And so we designed a very simple 3-question survey just to get some input about what people are interested in, how many meetings they've attended, what topics they're interested in. And I'm going to put the link in case you haven't done it yet. I'm put the link has been in the agenda announcement, in the minutes and whatever, but there it is again. And we're going to have a final report about this at next meeting, because we want to give everybody a chance. So I just give you a preliminary report. I was really surprised to see the immediate response. So again, 109 people on the list. We've gotten 33 responses so far, which is really good. And it hasn't been just regulars. It's been some people, this surprised me. We got answers from people who don't come regularly. And some of them explained why, which was great. It's definitely what Toby just observed is true, that there was a very high interest in climate action, but other things too, as you'll see when we have the full report next month with hopefully some more people participating. So SurveyMonkey is very cool because it gives you graphs and all this stuff, and the graphs will be fun to look at together. And so it's really important, you know, if you didn't participate, it's really important for you to have your voice, or whatever one calls it when you click on a survey. It's important for you to be heard, because it will really help us, the steering committee, decide how to prioritize what goes on the agenda, who to reach out to, and whatever else. You know, it will give us an insight into what you're all thinking, because the format for this meeting, especially on Zoom, is not really conducive to a lot of interaction. And Rochelle certainly tries as much as possible, but it's just, you know, you're in a box and there you are. So yes, so we have high hopes for a few more people participating, even though 33 is pretty good. So stay tuned. And Rosalind, you didn't get the survey because you're not on the mailing list, but I'll get it to you.
Okay, I have different addresses now, and would like to be back on the mailing list.
Okay, well, I'm going to put my email in the chat box, and if you, I know that there are a couple people, Amy, I think I added you. You should have gotten the announcement this morning, but a couple of people got the announcement about this meeting from somewhere else, or they went to the Ashby Village calendar. So if you didn't get a direct email from me about the meeting, send me your email address, and I will make sure you're on the mailing list.
And what is your address?
I'm putting it into the chat. It's freestonejulie@gmail.com. I hope that I'm typing it right. My vision problem doesn't work with small font. There, you should be seeing it.
Mm-hmm. I can see it in the chat. Is that something that you can see, Rosalind?
I clicked on chat, but I got.
It's way down towards the bottom.
Show right up on your screen. I will also put it in the minutes. So, yes, okay. So-
And I have a request. Could I have copies of previous minutes, maybe the last two meetings, well, start at the first of the year, the January meeting.
Okay, as soon as I have your email address, I'll send you the minutes.
Okay, I don't know how I got this. No, I don't want it.
Okay, any other questions or comments about the survey?
I have a plug. It's really fast. If you haven't done it, I finished it in like 3 minutes, and it would have been faster, except I had to think what my priorities were. So,
Yeah.
great job, Julie.
Well, thank you. I actually did participate in drafting it, and it was longer, but the person, Judy Appel, worked with me and it got shorter. So it's even shorter now than it was before, and it was pretty short before. So yes, thank you. That's a great plug.
Yeah.
Very time consuming. Okay.
All right. And at this point, the next agenda item that it would be good for us to take a look at is the need that Elder Action has for volunteers. At this point, because we now have staff members at Ashby Village who have said that they would step forward. And in particular, we have 40 new volunteers who have just gone through volunteer training, that it may be that we have the opportunity to get some volunteer assistance for several of the things we're doing. So I think at this point, Julie and I have both spoken about what sorts of volunteers would be useful from our perspective, but I would be very eager to hear from people here at this general meeting to say, well, it would really be great if a volunteer, I'll give you one example. Julie has been heroic at taking our minutes over and over again, and also kind of bouncing over to the chat box, putting things in and monitoring it. But that's a heck of a lot for one person to do. So if there were a volunteer, for example, who would monitor the chat each time we had a general meeting, that would leave Julie more able to do minutes without interference. So any other thoughts?
And I just want to say something, because I don't think Rochelle really needs an assistant. She's got a whole bunch of different balls in the air that have to do with this. And there are too many things to list. But if somebody really didn't want to lead Elder Action, but wanted to help her in 10 ways that she could, delegate, she would love that. So it doesn't have to be someone here at this meeting, but if you know somebody that you think would make a great assistant, probably not talking about more than what, Rochelle, 10 hours a month or something?
Whatever they can do.
Okay.
Would be most appreciated.
Use your imagination, recruit somebody.
Thank you. Other ideas? Mark, is there something you want to say?
Okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, I guess we will go with some of the ideas that are kind of out and about, and hopefully someone will have the perfect person for me to not only have as an assistant, but to really educate about some of these issues, perhaps to attend some of the third act meetings and get a better sense of that organization. So it will be not just sort of drudgery work, but there's a lot of fun in store for someone to.
Let me make a plug. Whoever works with Rochelle is going to have a great time and learn a lot. So think about it and ask your friends.
Thank you, John.
Michelle, I did want to put in something that's not something that we have to deal with now, but we're going to be coming into income tax return time. And we have this issue of the automatic budget that goes into the Pentagon and related spending. that gets renewed no matter what. And it seems to me that it's really, if it's possible to be part of an organized dissent against the proportion of our taxes that are going into military expenditure, that might be something we could be part of.
Along the lines of that, Mark, there was something that Bill McKibben spoke about when he addressed us as a group and said that he had done a workshop through Third Act about how to write letters to the editor and how to write op-ed pieces that would actually be picked up by major news organizations and social media. And that's already recorded. And so if anybody wants to take the issue of the automatic Pentagon budget or of other issues that we've been talking about today and do that, I would be more than happy to send you all the information on how you could connect to that recording. Because
We'll put the link to it in the minutes again. It was in a month or so ago. We could do it again.
terrific.
Thank you. And there is some specific legislation that's related to that in calling for a Pentagon audit.
Mhm. And I would dare say that our congressional representative in this 510 area, Barbara Lee,
She is the sponsor.
yeah, and so her information will be out and about in not too long either. And I think that sums up, I don't see other hands. Is there anyone else who's wishing to?
I'm lost.
You're lost.
I'm lost.
Oh dear.
Lost in cyberspace.
Okay, are we, Rochelle, are we on announcements and upcoming events?
Almost, but I see Judy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a time for me to mention that. Personally, I'm becoming more involved in the plastic pollution problem and am going to be coordinating some of our interest with our San Francisco villages. And also we're attending some seminars. Both they and I am attending some seminars about plastic issues. So it's just something that will come down the line, and I'll let you know more as I learn more.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I know also that Roberta, you had some things that you wanted to talk about, both in terms of announcements and of upcoming events.
Correct. Yes, I have a bunch of them, so bear with me. I'm going to talk about an upcoming Ashby Village event and then about some bills that have and have not passed our state legislature that are important to us. So firstly, I just want to mention that on Sunday, March 27th, there's going to be a joint sponsored presentation by the Arts and Culture and Member Support Teams at Ashby Village by Louise Aronson, who some of you may know. She's a pretty well-known geriatrician and professor of medicine at UCSF. And what she's going to talk about, believe it or not, is not just important in general to all seniors, but very personal to each of us sitting here today on Zoom. So one of the points she made, which kind of really was quite shocking to me, was she talked about the fact that in general, people are considered to be part of old age when they turn 65. And we all know that most of us live longer, or many of us continue to live longer and longer. So that in fact, we spend about a third of our lifetime in what's called elderhood, or in old age. And one of the really disturbing pieces of information that came out of what I've learned from her and noticed myself is that we are the least researched age group. There is so little information when medical studies are done. Often the cutoff point of people who are studied are under 65. There's very few research studies that include older people. So the kinds of medication we get, the kinds of treatments we get are really standardized to younger people and not to a third of our older years. So there's really a big need to improve the kind of medical care that older people get. But in addition to that, the social supports that many of us need is sorely missing from our society, so that she makes a very important distinction between the frail elderly, people who are sick, and often most of us are described as the frail elderly who are sort of in a state of decrepitude, and totally ignores the normative issues of aging, which are really important. In other words, what do we need as we grow old, dealing with pretty normative things like hearing and vision and mobility issues. So she's got a lot to tell us, a lot of very important things that we need to know personally, but also which can probably result in action that we may want to take as a group. So I really encourage you to join us on March 27th to hear her. She's a great speaker as well. And then I want to report, and also there'll be lots of announcements in our newsletter, so you'll get all the information about how to register for that event. But I also want to report on the bills that I had mentioned. And the first one is the Healthcare for All bill, which is interesting because it never came to a vote. So the people sponsoring the bill in the assembly pulled it before because they knew they didn't have enough votes to pass it. And what was really disturbing was that what we found out was organizations like CVS and Walgreens and Kaiser in particular gave millions and millions of dollars to make sure that bill never got voted on. So Kaiser, in fact, was one of the biggest opponents of that bill. So it never came to a vote, and the politicians did not want to go on record in an election year about whether they supported it or not. But that will be coming up again in another year, and it'll be interesting to see what happens then. But the good news is two important bills did pass, and one of them was the climate corporate accountability bill, which means that large corporations have to be accountable for their plans to reduce carbon emissions. And this time, there's actually going to be teeth in the bill because it's going to have to be yearly reports on the progress they're making in reducing carbon emissions. So that's a great bill, and it passed the House, and I believe, I think it passed the House. It has to go to the, got it mixed up. Passed the Senate. It has to go to the House for a vote. And if you so wish, you can write to Buffy Wicks, so I'm sure we'll vote for it, but it couldn't hurt to write to our reps about making sure it does get voted for. The second one is the nursing home reform bill, which is going to make, yes, Rochelle.
I just had a quick question. Does it help to have people also write saying, thank you? We really appreciate the bill passed. It really means a lot to us that this is going to move forward in California.
Yeah, I think so. It always helps. It was Senate Bill 260, and I think it was Scott Wiener's bill. So that wouldn't hurt for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, the nursing home bill was an interesting bill. What it says is that operators of nursing homes cannot buy any other nursing homes if they have existing violations on their license. And that seems like a no-brainer, but believe it or not, that's what's been happening as these larger and larger nursing home owners kept buying up more and more nursing homes. And some of them have been charged with all kinds of ignoring rules and regulations and still allowed to buy even more nursing homes. So this is going to make sure that doesn't happen. And that bill has passed the Assembly and is going to the Senate now for passage. So we're hopeful that will pass. And the other thing I want to mention is that on the federal level, the Build Back Better bill actually has a piece in it for home and community-based services. So that would mean bringing home care into the home. And surprisingly and wonderfully, both Senator Sinema and Manchin are supporting that part of the bill. And there's also a piece about around climate change that's in that bill, which strangely enough, it seems like Manchin may support as well. So there's a glimmer of hope on the federal level. And that is my report. And I just wanted to put a plug in for CARA because I'm the liaison with CARA, and they are just amazing in terms of
What CARA stands for, if people don't know.
good. Yeah, it's the California Association for Retired Americans, and they're a wonderful lobbying group. They keep us abreast of all the important legislation affecting us older people and what we can do to help get important legislation passed. So as a matter of fact, our affiliate dues are coming up, Rochelle, I meant to mention, and we should talk about that at our next steering committee meeting.
Yes, let's put that on that agenda because it's important for us to keep up with this. I think also maybe Julie, if you could, in the next set of minutes that go out, at least list, Roberta, you can let Julie know the numbers of those bills that you were talking about. So if people are interested in responding to them, we at least have the formal way of doing that.
You know what, maybe I'll send it directly to you, Julie, to put in the minutes. Would that make sense?
Yes, and they were in last month's minutes too, but you can send it to me again just to be sure I have the right bills.
Great. Okay, thank you all. Any questions at all about any of that?
I still don't know how I'm going to get on the mailing list.
I will put you, this is Julie Rosalind, I will put you on the mailing list.
You what?
I will put you on the mailing list.
Okay, thanks. But I don't know where to send it to, what my email address is.
What is your email address?
All right, it's kind of goofy, but a bunch of people got involved. It's ROZ dash Z dash.
Wait, ROZ dash, go ahead.
Z dash, again, Gore at Comcast.net.
Okay.
And the way that came about, the Comcast person was saying, I jokingly said, I always used to be known as Rozzy. And so she translated it into the two Z's and the.
Okay, well, hopefully I've got it right. And I think somebody else has an announcement to make, right, Rochelle?
I think so. Are there, but we'll make sure that you get.
Margot, it's Margot.
I see Margot, yes. But Rosalind will be in contact.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. Margot.
Yes, on next Sunday, I'm having people stop by the house to sign a petition between 2 and 4 regarding SB 9. SB 9 is the law that was passed that would allow the state to come in and, or a developer to come in and split your single family home lot in half and build 8 apartments on it without any city regulation. And so we have a petition that's we are collecting signatures to oppose that. And on Sunday between 2 and 4, I'm at 1300A Shattuck Avenue, right across from Live Oak Park on Shattuck and Berryman. Come on by, have a glass of wine, a little cheese, and sign the petition, and we'd love to see you.
Okay,
If you have any questions, I'll send you something in the email.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have heard, I think that single family lots have often been used to keep people of color from buying into better, so-called better neighborhoods. Is that part of this argument?
Well, if that was true at the turn of the century, 1900, but it's no longer true. We have in the Rumford law prohibited discrimination against minorities and all sorts of things in the whole state of California. And so we no longer have allowed discrimination. When I had my house in the Berkeley Hills and I bought it in 1969, there was something in the deed where I could not sell my house to people of color, and I could not sell liquor out of my house. which was a result of prohibition, of course. But that law, that was outlawed in the 1960s, and it is no longer true. And what has happened subsequently since that law, we've had GI Bill, we've had all sorts of middle-class African Americans buy homes, and it's no longer true. The only thing that's keeping people from buying homes these days is the price. And as you know, in Berkeley, the price is horrible. But but anyway, that's an argument that the opponents are using, but it's no longer valid.
Margot, I want to ask, does this just pertain to Berkeley? Like, I live in Oakland.
No, this is a statewide initiative.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to say is Roberta, did you want to mention Louise Aronson's book, Elderhood, that
Sure you did.
you're muted? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I was just in the wrong place. Yes, the book is Elderhood, and it has a long subtitle, which I don't have in front of me, but it's very readily available in the library now because it came out 2 years ago. It was actually nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, but it's not as in demand right now, so it's easy to get, and certainly you can pick it up in a bookstore as well. And I would suggest, if you have the time to read it, it is really a fascinating eye-opener. And I was reading it at bedtime, and I would get so upset I stopped reading it before I went to bed, because otherwise I'd stay up for hours thinking about what we should do next. So, but it's a very readable book filled with anecdotes and a lot of wonderful insights about the medical world and the social environment in which we grow older.
What time is that presentation on the 27th?
2 to 4, it's a Sunday afternoon, 2 to 4, and it's a typical arts and culture event, and it's being co-sponsored this time by member support as well.
And Amy, I think, did you have a question?
Well, 2 comments to add to Roberta's comments about Louise Aronson and the lack of research in people over 65 or over 75, however we want to define it. The medical universities are not teaching anything about gerontology. This is a place where we could get active if anybody wants to spearhead that. They do not have experience. The people studying just don't get to meet real old people, regular older people. There are no gerontology classes taught, or very, very few. You ask any young student now, oh yeah, I had 1 semester going through some of, like that. Secondly, I want to go back a little bit to Julie Freestone's report on PG&E and rooftop solar. Yay, I put it in the chat, but also apparently PG&E is going to raise everybody's costs 9 to 10% as of March 1st. Does anybody know about this? To me, it's a direct response to the fact that they failed the rooftop solar, but it may be many other things also. We're just going to pay through the nose again, and I don't know what resistance is going on.
I think there's a lot of resistance. I thought I just heard something this week about that being held up, but I'm not totally sure.
Well, I have to check into it and come back for the next meeting, because it was in today's paper or yesterday's that they have, I think, been approved for an increase.
Yeah, I saw it. It was in the paper today.
Mm-hmm. It may be a fait accompli, I don't know, but things can be changed.
And Amy, did you want to say something further?
No, I just wanted to put those 2 pieces out there. They're both areas where action could be taken eventually.
Mm-hmm. But I just want to add one more thing to what you said, Amy, that aside from it, there being very little taught about geriatrics, the pace that both internists and geriatricians get are so low. Mm-hmm. And so medical students more and more opt for specialties, and I was shocked at the quote, the differential in salaries. It's about 4 times as much if you go into a specialty like cardiology or surgery. And then you have so much money that you hire these, what they call scribes, to sit in with you, take all the notes, enter them in the computer, get your billing all set up. And my internist, complains all the time about being in the office till 8, 9 o'clock at night doing all this paperwork because he's not paid enough to be able to hire scribes to take care of a lot of that. So there's a lot that works against getting more and more people into just the very kinds of doctors we need and the medical care we need.
Well, the Grey Panthers had a thing with Kaiser where they organized, they asked Kaiser to put together a board of elder advisors. And they were the ones who got Kaiser to hire a gerontologist. And I don't know whether that board is still existing. I have a feeling that it's not. So that's a button we could push if we wanted to. And the other thing is with the scribes, what they're using for scribes are usually foreign medical graduates that don't have licenses in the United States or are still working in medicine. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah. There's a subcategory of elders, and it is elder orphans. And it's about elders who have outlived everyone in their families, amongst their friends. So I came across that expression, elder orphans. Wow. And I'm one of them. I don't like it one bit, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention that category.
And one reason they like specialties is they have to pay off these expensive student loans.
And that too is something that if maybe in this whole area, what we find is if there are about 6 people within Elder Action who wish to form a task force and really not just study something, but end up with offering us certain actions to take, kind of in the same way that Toby earlier was saying, well, we now have some things that we could do in terms of the electrification of transportation. If there are people who feel that they want to coalesce around some of these announced or emerging issues, the way to begin would be to really try and pull together perhaps about 6 people, in part because being older, we end up with various meetings we can't attend for various medical reasons at different times. But to have that core group of 6, if any of these things folks are raising, and I know the last time we also talked about issues around the privatization of Medicare itself, that would be something I think would move along some of these ideas from the idea stage to the actual doing stage. But if there are no further questions, I think we're kind of coming to the end of this meeting.
Rochelle, I wanted to add one thing about that,
Yes.
is that it might be good to save some time in our April meeting, which will be right after her presentation. And that may raise some interesting issues after we hear her, and maybe save some time to think about whether we want to create some action issues after that.
Yeah, and one of those areas might be around the whole long-term services and support issue. That I know many months ago, I think Julianne, you were involved somewhat in that. I know there are others who have been as well.
Right.
I guess, to reiterate that we meet every 3rd Tuesday of the month. The next meeting will be on March the 15th. But I wanted to close with 2 things. One is when you come next time, if you would also share, in addition to sharing with us something that you'd like to do, if there's any action step that you took in the interim month between this meeting and our next monthly meeting, whether that's even bringing to our Elder Action meeting someone else that you know that might be interested, whether you have joined Third Act and taken the pledge, whether you've decided to be purchasing a seat at the table that Judith Coates was talking about for Youth Alive. any number of things, submitting your alma mater to our alma mater spreadsheet. If you would share with people what you've been doing, that might be, I think, an interesting way for us to get to know each other, in addition to saying what we do and do not want to work on. So I also wanted to kind of close off with something that was given to me by the co-chair of the San Francisco Village Board, who Judy Sori was talking about before, insofar as looking at plastics as one of their environmental issues, climate issues that they're looking at. And it was a statement made by a young African boy, a South African boy of 12 years old, at one of the early AIDS conferences when having AIDS was a death sentence. And this is a 12-year-old who only lived to be 12 years old. He was born with AIDS. And what he addressed a group of, dignitaries from all over the world is, he said, it's important to do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. And I feel like, again, the fact that we're ordinary people, as elders doing extraordinary things together, is kind of a continuation of this young man's dream. So I want to thank everybody for coming today and being part of Elder Action, and looking forward to working with you more closely on some of the climate task force work and other things. So thank you.
Thank you. This was great for me.
I'm glad. Thank you for coming and making it that way.
Rochelle,
Yes.
when you turn off the recording, you should get a message asking you if you want to save it.
Mhm.
And you should say, yes, you do. And then I can't remember what happens after that.
I am trying to stop recording, only it's evading me. There we are. Now I've stopped. But I don't see any other message to me. But I'm still doing vision therapy, so I'm looking all around the screen.
Well, it may be when you get ready to leave, it'll ask you if you want.
Okay, I am allowed to still end the meeting. So I'm going to do that and try. Thanks very much for helping me set it up and close it out.
You did very well, by the way, in terms of managing the agenda. A+.
Well, thank you, because what I've taken, I think I even said to you before, that I have a new approach, which is that I write down in front of me how many minutes each agenda.
Yeah, well, you did very well in spite of the ringers and Rosalind and whatever.
Yeah, I being an elder orphan is hard for her.
Yes.
Really hard for her.
And some of the regulars were missing today, like Betsy.
Like Judy Appel.
Like Judy Appel.
And I don't know, it occurred to me to actually take steps and ask her directly to make sure to be here, but I don't know what to.
Well, okay, I don't know. Maybe you should send her an email saying,
missed you at today's meeting.
Yes, and whatever, I don't know.
No, I don't either.
And she wanted to talk about the DA panel, right?
Yeah, she's on the agenda.
Well, maybe you should say, missed you at today's meeting. We will put the DA panel on the Elder Action Steering Committee agenda. I hope you can be there to talk about it, because we don't have any information about it.
No, or any next steps that she's thinking makes sense to take.
Maybe there are no next steps.
Maybe not. When's the next Elder Action Steering meeting?
By the way, could you send me the quote from the African kid?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, it should be Thursday the 3rd.
Okay. All right. I will let her know.
Well, I think we had a good turnout today in terms of new people and people who were engaged.
And people talked.
They did.
I like that much better than my talking all the time at everybody.
Right. And, you could have 30 people, but if only 4 people talk, what's the use? I mean, it's not about
exactly. And people were quite engaged at the climate task force meeting. They
Oh,
really,
good. Oh,
yeah.
good.
And you know, I wasn't sure, should I talk about it? Should I not talk about it? I figured not, just because I'm figuring I should say less and listen more. But
Okay, so do you know Rosalind?
I don't.
Have you ever crossed
I've
paths
never-
with her?
No, this is the first
Is
time.
she an Ashby Village member?
I have no idea.
She obviously went to the calendar.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And by the way, Joan Cole sent me a message saying she couldn't get in.
Yes, and she, you know what happened is she started sharing a screen with me. It was the weirdest.
She's done that before.
Yeah,
Right.
because I think she's just pressing buttons and doesn't know what she's activating, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
In some, and I saw her last night.
Okay, did you make the salad? Yes. Oh, good. Do you want me to go with you? I can. Okay.
And I had dinner with her last night, and I went through, here's what you do in terms of the password. And here's what you don't need that. Here's what
You don't
you
need a password.
Right. Because she kept asking me, what's my, and she's got that in the chat too.
Oh, well.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
Where did you go for dinner?
We have an annual Valentine's dinner, she and I and Martin and Felix. And so,
Nice.
yeah. Every Valentine's Day we meet them for dinner, this time at Zaytoon, actually.
Nice.
They have outdoor seating as well as
Right.
indoor and
Right.
so on. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I thank you for your happy Valentine's wish. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was interesting. My friend, I mean, we don't really do much for Valentine's Day and don't send, greetings and stuff, but it was interesting because a friend of mine who's single and has been for a million years made mention of the fact that 3 or 4 of her friends sent her Valentine's Day greetings, and she was very pleased. So, it's a weird holiday because, people who are single, even though people who are not single often don't care about Valentine's Day, people who are single, I think are very conscious of,
the world around them seems to be all paired up and they're not.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's something I keep getting in my gazillions of advertisements, Galentine's Day. And it's women taking out other women for Valentine's Day.
Oh, Galentine, I get it. Yeah, that's good. Well, I think that I'm not sure if this is true, but on New Year's Eve, when Rudy always used to work, I would always go out on New Year's Eve with my gal friends.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. It was a tradition. And then he stopped working.
Yeah, so that was that. Yeah, but it's funny because there's actually, it's also not a religious holiday that connects to any other particular religion, in the same way Halloween is.
Right.
Or at least has become in this society. And so it's a chance for people who don't celebrate other things to feel part of it, whatever. Anyway, I don't want to keep you long.
Well, yes, because I have a meeting with Charisse in half an hour.
Are we going to ask them to change the thing that Jessica wrote, though, about what we need in terms of assistance?
Well, yeah, I mean,
that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't have any punch to it, and it's written like some kind of a report or something. I mean, it is. It's the request that we wrote.
Yeah, but it's weird to me.
No, I would just forego it for this month. And
could we? Are you
totally out of context?
Can you tell that to Sherry?
Yes.
Yeah, because it doesn't work, and I really appreciate your pitch for help for me because I'm just every day. I talked to Bill Haskell from San Francisco Village for an hour today.
Well, I don't know if you're going to get anybody to volunteer to do that.
No, but once it would help me. No, but he's actually doing what he's trying to do with San Francisco Village is start an elder action.
How is he doing anyway?
He's doing all right.
He was working on a book.
Yes, he was working on his life partner's memoir.
Did he finish it?
I believe he finished what he needed to do.
Oh, good.
And he sounds sort of all chipper and active and
good. I have to say I did like him. I can't say that I loved working with him to produce a product, but he was a very pleasant guy.
Yeah, and he really actually had lovely things to say about you today too. And he said, "Gee, please give my regards to Julie. I really enjoyed working with her."
Well, I mean, I have to say that I think, considering that he was in a panic after you got sick,
Yes.
probably anybody that was breathing and said they would help would have been okay. But
No. He made a point of saying that you were quick with your responses. I mean, he had specifics and
and how about MA?
MA and I are talking on next week on the 18th on Friday. That's particularly why I wanted to make the point today. Robin is usually not quite that vague. There's something I think doing with her husband and his health. But I was really happy that MA spoke out about what she got out of, she's just in a whole other.
Yeah, right.
And so I've already approached her and she said she and I are going to talk on the 18th.
Yes, and so were you going to ask her about the steering committee?
Oh yeah, that's what we're.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Roberta gave the same, in spite of
despite being out.
right, and it was not even so I'm confused because last time she said the bills passed.
Yes, and now
apparently they didn't pass, and I'm really confused because I thought that the legislature was now in recess, so that anything that did not pass is not.
It's not going to.
I'm
That's why it doesn't.
And she had those bill numbers before, and she announced that they had. So these might be different bills. Also, I just want to say something about SB 9.
Yeah, I did not like that.
I don't know Margot Smith.
Me neither, and I don't know which group she keeps talking about.
All right, so I asked Amy Gorman
about
SB 9 and what Margot said, and she said, something about Margot. Basically, I guess this isn't what she said, but she said that Margot is wonderful and knows everything.
Oh.
Well, but then she sent a follow-up chat saying actually she had made a mistake about something. So let me tell you what I tried to be very soft about what I said. This is
you were, but I think I
heard about this whole business about the single family, no split lots it's racist.
Yeah.
And Berkeley is particularly bad.
Yes, agreed.
So I didn't want to say that, but I'm sure as hell not signing a petition to support keeping them all single families. And her answer about the fact that there's no discrimination is just bullshit.
It's really ridiculous. It's not at all close to reality. And what I also am seeing, and this is actually a Judy Appel problem too, is that within even South Berkeley, there are a whole bunch of wealthier,
gentrifying
lesbian couples, gay and lesbian couples who are gentrifying South Berkeley, which is one of the few areas in Berkeley that had a large Black population.
Oh, well, to be continued. You and I could go on forever, but I have to go.
You have to go. I have to go. Let's make a lunch date so we can.
Oh, definitely.
A little bit. I'll once I wake up or come up for air, I'll send you a couple dates.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thanks so much. Bye.